night, all is calm, all is bright. I was thinking about those words this past week and feeling in my heart that there's nothing I'd rather have true this season than that all is calm and all is bright. That we are at a place, by God's grace, beyond the fear and exhaustion of COVID-19 and all the political rancor that has gone with it. For our fevered brows to cool down, our anxiety to calm down, and for the brightness from above to shine into this dark world and give us hope and peace. I have to tell you, I was not as good as I usually am about keeping Advent this past year. I mean, usually I'm holding the reins on Christmas. I'm saying, whoa, 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 slow down. Don't just zip through Advent, pace yourself. But not this year. This year I was the one who, as soon as we entered the first day of November, I said to Linda, I want to get those decorations out soon. I want to have some joy, some happiness, some hope. Christmas. I had an encounter that I've mentioned to some of you before, 6 or 7 years ago with a neighbor. It was like November 1st or 2nd, and I went for a run, and when I ended the run on my street, I walked it off, the rest of it to cool down before I got home. And I was walking past this house about 10 houses before mine, and this guy, maybe late 30s, was out on the front porch with a ladder hanging Christmas lights on November 1st or 2nd. And I just shouted out to him, I said, boy, you sure are ahead of the game. And he didn't look at me. He just kept doing the job. But he said, I just need some Christmas. And he said it like that, in that deadpan kind of way. I just need some Christmas. And I don't know what was going on in his life. I imagined maybe his wife was sick. Maybe he'd lost a loved one. Maybe he'd lost a job. I don't know. But whatever it was, he felt that he needed Christmas to make it better. And I have to tell you, after all we faced this past year, I now deeply understand that guy. I mean, 6 or 7 years ago, I was thinking, you're not even thinking about Advent. But now I think I understand completely. I'm with you. I need Christmas. And in the midst of this pandemic, it seems like the whole world has been yearning for Christmas. We have a local radio station that back in August was playing round-the-clock Christmas music. Christmas music. So I was out there on the farm. It was hot as heck, 105 degrees it felt like out there. I was sweating like crazy coming across the farm. And one of my coworkers had his radio on and it was playing, Here Comes Santa Claus, Here Comes. I thought, he ain't coming in this heat. What? And also that the Hallmark channel put their Hallmark Christmas movies on earlier. They started really early. Why? Well, I read because of the pandemic. That they knew a whole bunch of people were having to stay inside and they were depressed and they needed some Christmas. Not reruns of Olympic Games, not just 60 days of Seinfeld, but Christmas. Why? Well, you might say, it's just that it's an upbeat time, A lot of beautiful colors, a lot of happy songs, a lot of people busy, a lot of action, and it's something we share with the whole world. And I think all those things are true, but I think there's something much, much deeper going on. If Christmas were purely a secular celebration, and I know it gets secularized a lot, but what I'm saying is if it were only secular, that at every level all the way down it was just secular, like maybe it was the Feast of the Winter Solstice, or a pink elephant celebration, or something like that, would it be the go-to place when you're in despair? No. When you're at a place of feeling hopelessness, depression, exhaustion, you don't say, I want to put the DVD in from that New Orleans Mardi Gras last year. You say, I need Christmas. I think that even when people can't accept it, even when they don't acknowledge it, even though they're not always conscious of it, Christmas has power. Because it tells this ancient, wonderful story of a remarkable love that comes to heal the world. It says that life matters, that we matter, that there is something bigger and more beautiful and more wonderful than the drab realities of this world, that there's a reason beyond humanity for hope and joy and peace. Just think about it. Tonight, this very night, all across the whole world, hundreds of millions of people will turn up in all kinds of churches or be on Zoom all across the world for Christmas. People who don't even believe in God, or people who don't know what they believe. And even if they can't articulate it, I have no doubt that what's drawing it in is this holy mystery of God's love for the world. Now, I'll admit something tonight, and that is that I find myself in this season, and maybe especially this year, getting kind of teary at certain moments along the way. You know, if I hear an old Christmas carol that I hadn't heard in a long time, or I see that somebody has this lighted little nativity in their front yard, or I watch one of those Christmas commercials, I can't help it. I tear right up. I think a lot of us do. And I think it's because we know in our souls that there's something at work under all of this, something that cannot be captured by parties and lights and even Hallmark movies. It's something that you feel down in your bones. That there is this beautiful, wonderful power that is real and is there. Something, someone, that will ultimately set things right, make sense of this crazy world, lift my struggling heart up with hope. Have you seen the Kohl's Christmas commercial? Every year I kind of pick out my favorite Christmas commercial. That's my favorite this year, the Kohl's commercial. It's a little girl, and she's at home, obviously bored to death because she's having to stay in the house with her parents because of COVID. And she's upstairs in her bedroom, and she looks out of her window across the alley into the bedroom window across the way. The drapes are pulled open, and there's an elderly black woman there. And the little girl quickly waves at the woman, and she waves back. Then the little girl goes and grabs a piece of paper, and she writes on it, "Hi." And the older woman writes back, "Nice to meet you." And she says, "Will you be my friend?" And the lady says, "Of course." "What's your favorite color?" "Green." "What's your name?" And before the woman can answer, she gets pulled downstairs. And when she comes back up, the lady's no longer there. And days pass, and weeks pass, and it moves from fall into winter to Christmas Day, but the woman's not there. And then on Christmas morning, the little girl, first thing she does, she looks out the window, and the drapes are open, and there's the woman. She's in a house robe, and she's got a hospital bracelet on her wrist. And they wave at each other. And the old woman holds up a sign that says, "Did you get what you wished for?" And the little girl, full of tears, nods her head. Yes. Because what she obviously wished for is that her new friend would not die. Now, what I love so much about that commercial is it speaks of that tender, selfless love that is at the very heart of Christmas. That is what the whole of Christmas is all about. This selfless love of God in Jesus. Sometime last week on the ABC Evening News, they had a woman from the U.S. Postal Service. What she does is she reads the letters that come to the post office to Santa before she sends them on to the North Pole. And so she was reading a few of them that night. And she read one letter from a little boy who was asking Santa to help his grandmother not die. A little girl was asking Santa for a cure for this disease. And another little boy was asking Santa to help his mommy get a job so they could stay in their apartment. Of course, we know it's not Santa who can give those gifts. But what made me step back was how grown up that Christmas list was. You know, when I was that age, I was only thinking about, I want that purple bike I saw in the Western Auto Store. Or, I want the Hot Wheel cars that I saw in the Sears catalog. But these children have something much heavier on their hearts. You may know Amy Grant. She's a Christian singer. She sings a great Christmas song. If you haven't listened to it, go home and listen tonight. It's called My Grown-Up Christmas List. In the beginning of the song, she says, "I'm all grown up now, but I still have a heart full of Christmas hope. Not for myself only, but for the whole world." And then she starts singing out that list. And here it is. That there would be no more lives torn apart. That wars would never start. That time would heal all hearts. That everyone would have a friend. That right would always win. That love would never end. And then at the end of the song she sings, "But heaven knows that packages and bows cannot heal the human soul. I was doing a little Christmas project with my daughters last weekend, and we got into this big conversation, believe it or not, about the First World War. And we were talking about the Christmas truce of 1914. You might know about that. You know, the British and the Germans had been killing each other for weeks. And then there was a lull in the fighting right before Christmas. And the British could hear in the distance Germans singing Christmas carols, carols that they knew. And they started singing the carols. They're both singing the same Christmas carols in German and in English. And then some of them take the risk to step out in no man's land, that area between the two armies. And others come, and they meet there in the middle, and they exchange tokens, and they laugh and talk. And that afternoon, the British and the Germans played soccer with each other. And then Christmas was over, and they went back to killing each other. One of my girls said, "How could war continue after that? Why didn't they just stop?" And I love the heart behind that question. She was saying, you know, if they both believe in God, if they can stop long enough to sing Christmas carols, then why can't they just be together? If Christmas is powerful enough to cause an army to stop killing, even for a day, then why can't Christmas be powerful enough to continue beyond that day? Well, it's sort of like marriage, I told her. The feelings you have on the honeymoon are not going to be there every single day of marriage forevermore. I mean, those feelings are going to come and go here and there. Why? Because you're in the marriage. Right? I mean, that's the problem. If we weren't in the marriage, maybe it wouldn't be that way. But we're all fallen, sinful people, full of ego and pride and greed and lust and all the other things that make it impossible to sustain that kind of honeymoon feeling through all the ups and downs of daily life. That Christmas truce, the First World War, it happened at the beginning of the war, before their hearts had been destroyed. And the next year, the second year of that war, there was another Christmas truce, but it was in little pockets here and there. It wasn't as big. And in the third year, the war had created so much fear and death and hatred that there was no more Christmas truce. It takes a lot more than Christmas carols to sustain a fallen world in peace and love. Because why? We're frail humans. We can't sustain within ourselves that kind of steadfast, unbreakable love. We can't do it. Because of the simple nature of who we are, we can't sustain that kind of love. But God can and does. It's the reality of God's love that sustains Christmas. Not only bringing it back to us every year, but growing it in the hearts of those who trust it. Whether it's January, June, or July. In the face of the vilest hatred, the meanest cruelty, the emptiest darkness. When marriage is what marriage is supposed to be, a commitment to a covenantal vow. Not just a feeling, because you know, feelings are fickle, they're up and down day by day depending on circumstances, but a commitment to a covenantal vow that you're going to act with love, even when the feelings aren't all there. Then it becomes a very different, deeper thing. And when you've been married as long as we have, you know, we're going on year 36. Been together 40 years because we dated for 4. And you get mad at each other, you know all the pet peeves, and you say, she does that one more time. And she says, if he says that one more time, I'm going to kick him. But then, you know, she washes my clothes, and I make her coffee first thing in the morning, and you keep going through the motions. Why? Because underneath there is this solid love. There's a whole history of love there. And isn't that what we have in God? We have a whole history of love, a whole Bible of love. All these amazing moments where God shows His love, most especially in the cross of Christ. That love is always solidly there. What we have to do, though, is choose to allow it to live in us, to live Christmas lives. It's a choice. It's a daily choice to take the hand of God, to allow that love to have the overriding power so that the decisions we make and the things we do are more shaped by that love than by the fallenness of this world. Some years ago, I was working with a church mission group, and we were rebuilding the homes of poor people. And the house that I ended up with was the house of an elderly black woman named Annie Mae. And she had lived in this impoverished place her whole life. It was a shack. I mean, no running water, no electricity, no insulation in the walls, holes in the walls here and there. And it was sad business. When she was a little girl, she had seen her father murdered by two men at the end of their street. And then she lived there with her mom until 20 years before her mother died. And ever since, she lived there by herself. She was mentally challenged, so she could not always communicate clearly. But every morning, she walked to the local high school where she was a dishwasher in the cafeteria. And she was very excited that a group of people had come to do something to make her house better. But I think she was a little nervous about having all these white people in the house, especially after what happened to her daddy. So she'd walk around back and forth, and she'd reach in her apron pocket, and she'd pull something out, and she'd look at it, she'd put it back. Pull it out, look at it, put it back. And once, when I saw her doing that, I said, Miss Annie Mae, what you got? And shyly, but proudly, she produced what she called her Christmas ball. It was one of those balls. It had the little plastic figures of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in it, and the fake snow. You shake it up, and you see the beauty of that quiet little world. And I asked her, why are you looking at it so much? And she said rather sophisticatedly, because it brings Christmas to my heart. What was that dear old woman doing? Trying to survive in a very dark and dangerous world by reminding herself that there's a safe place, that there is goodness and beauty and gentleness and love. There is a reason to hope. Christmas is an everlasting reality. Now, that neighbor of mine who was putting up those Christmas lights so early said because he needed some Christmas. Do you think that those lights were enough to override his despair? I'm sorry to say, no, they did not, because they could not. They could trigger a memory of Christmas gone by, maybe some happy childhood joy, but that's momentary, because they're just lights. It's only when we go deeper than the lights, behind the carols, behind the boxes and bows, to that underlying reality that is this deep and glorious love of God for the whole world. This never-ending, constant, overflowing love of God. You remember a few weeks ago in a sermon I told you about my friend Larry Hendry. We were in seminary together. He was the one that was kind of like a monk. He lived a very minimalist life. He had 5 pairs of pants and 5 shirts and 1 pair of shoes, no car, no bike. And I came back from Christmas break the first year to discover that he had been there by himself all over Christmas break, that he didn't have enough money to go home. And I felt terrible until I heard him talk about what a wonderful Christmas he had. And as I listened, I realized he wasn't just saying that to make me feel better. It really had been a wonderful Christmas for him. He said, you know, the campus was deserted and it was just beautifully quiet. And he said, I had this big book about spiritual matters, and it really gave me new insights about God. And I walked around exploring those insights. And then Christmas morning, he spent several hours in the soup kitchen serving people in need. And that was the first time in my life I realized that you could have Christmas without presents or a tree or even other people. That it's still Christmas, full of wonder and hope and that beautifully deep peace, because the love of God is at the heart of Christmas. And that love is always and forever there. I hope tomorrow, in the midst of your Christmas, that you will pause to thank God for that love, to praise and celebrate that most important gift, and that you will carry it with you beyond tomorrow into a Christmas life. Amen.